All right, good morning. This is Senate Health and Welfare. It is April 18th. And we're going to go walk through and consider some decision points on SH 238, which is the PFAS bill. We've had a lot of testimony on it. And I know that there are still sticking points for folks. And there was a question about adding in a whole bill on fire worker firemen, what do you call it? Fire protection equipment. That's what we call it. Michael, why don't you come up and help us go through bit by bit and get to thank you, Senator. I know. Yes. Yeah. All right, and then after that, we're gonna try to go through H91 in a similar way, try and look at what. This isn't the last time for 238, but it is important that we start to make decisions.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So do you want to just do line by line?
Yeah, let's go through. I know there are decision points in here, but it will be helpful to go through the bill for fairly thoroughly. And then when we get to those spots where we think there are decision points, we'll stop and have a conversation. I think the larger conversation, obviously, is we haven't looked at the language with the fire protection equipment. And at some point, we should do that. So we can talk about that one as well. Go right ahead.
Okay. So this is Mike Grady, legislative council. You're looking at H 238 that's passed the House. The first section amends that subchapter in the consumer protection chapter in Title IX that you enacted last year in Act 131. The definitions, many of them are largely the same. Adult mattress, aftermarket stain and water resistant treated apparel. They stay the same. There's a new definition because they knew there are 3 new products being added to the prohibitions underneath the subchapter. One of them is a cleaning product. So the compound intended for routine cleaning, including general purpose cleaners, bathroom cleaners, glass cleaners, carpet cleaners, floor care products, hand soaps. It does not mean an antimicrobial pesticide. Definition of cookware remains the same. Another new product is dental floss, a string-like device made of cotton and other fibers intended to remove crack and food particles from between the teeth to reduce tooth decay. Fibers may be coated with wax for easier use. Another new product, the third of the 3, is fluorine treated container, a fluorinated treated plastic container. Then on page 3, incontinency protection product remains the same. The definition of intentionally added doesn't change. It was changed by the House to include PFAS that is introduced to the final product through the manufacturing process. They also wanted it to be clear that the addition of the PFAS must be known or reasonably ascertainable by the manufacturer, and that term known or reasonably ascertainable is defined. And then they wanted to be clear that PFAS shall not be considered intentionally added if the chemical is present in the product due to use of water containing PFAS and the manufacturer took no action that resulted in PFAS being present. Now that sentence, this whole definition, you've heard testimony requesting changes. The AG, based on input from A&R, would like the last sentence to change to be based on whether it's from a public water supply permitted by A&R or whether or not it meets the MCLs for PFAS in the state. There's some testimony from industry about the definition that first sentence about how PFAS is introduced. So I do not know where you are on either of those two.
The suggestion from A and R was on the second half, we'll start with the second half, that part.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, if you've got it.
You received the
We have
letter
that.
from the Attorney General,
Yeah.
and she asked that it say PFAS shall not be considered intentionally added on the basis of water used in the manufacture of the product. That the water used in the manufacture of the product was from a public water system permitted under that chapter, or a water source that does not violate the maximum contaminant levels for PFAS established in the rules again established under the drinking water chapter. So that's what the AG Vaynar's input proposed for that.
Can we look at that language in the bill? Because I think
Sure.
that it's a recommendation from both the executive branch and the AG. And then as to the first section.
Well, I don't know if you actually got a specific recommended
We did.
change, but Bill Driscoll did testify that they still have concerns about that first sentence.
If you sink a well on your property, because you don't want to pay for the city water with chlorine and everything else in it. That might not be public water standards. It might not be for PFAS. It might have other kinds of issues in it.
But it only has to meet the MCLs for PFAS.
Okay. Okay,
And
so
and
I
I
have
believe Matt Chapman testified that
that,
there are some readily available PFAS testing kits.
that we're not expensive.
And carbon filtration treatment.
But I think Bill Driscoll's point was, I just don't think he likes the first sentence.
Right, let's look at the first one.
And I don't think he offered any input, but maybe he did. But again, this is to address if PFAS is used as or a PFAS substance or PFAS product is used in the manufacturing process, maybe it's some sort of solvent, maybe it's some sort of chemical for polishing. Maybe, it's not intended as the ingredient of the final product, but in the process, PFAS wind up in the final product due to the use of that PFAS product.
Yeah.
And so that's what the first sentence is intended to address. And remember, it has to be intentionally added, so they knew that they were using it and known or reasonably ascertainable. And it has to be in the final product. So the machine that was made with PFAS and the machine that's making the product,
It's like like the turf, where they use PFAS to let it slide through the
right,
thing.
right,
Yeah.
right. But if they're using PFAS as part of the process and it's intentionally added and it winds up in the final product, that's correct. But if the PFAS is in the overall machine,
Yeah.
and it's not being introduced into the final product, then that's not going to be considered as intentionally added.
That makes a whole lot of sense.
So,
Yeah, let's hold it right here. And we
okay,
can,
no changes to the first sentence.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Juvenile product, which you added last year, you added changes adding a specific reference to pacifier, which would have already been included because it's a product designed or marketed for use by children under 12 years of age. But the House Committee learned that there are some pacifiers with PFAS in it, and they wanted to.
Oh my God.
really
sorry.
step that out.
Yeah.
Page 4, lines 6 through 8. There's the new definition of known or reasonably ascertainable, which refers back to the definition intentionally added. All information in a person's possession of control, plus all information that a reasonable person similarly situated might be expected to possess control or nothing. And that's a pretty standard for known or reasonably ascertainable. Should I move on?
Yeah, that's good. I think unless the committee shouts out.
All right, so the rest of these definitions are largely unchanged: manufacturer, medical device, outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions. PFAS itself. I remember that was part of the debate and the discussion when the Act 131 report came back. And the House Committee chose to stay with the traditionally used definition. Personal protective equipment, regulated PFAS, that's important for the textiles and the textile articles. Because on page 5, line 20, you will see in a subsequent section of the bill, the 100 parts per million will be reduced to 50 parts per million, as you enacted in Act 131 last year. Page 6, definition of rug or carpet. I did make a mistake in the prohibition section with regard to rugs or carpets, and we'll come back to that in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Just wanted to flag that.
Yeah.
Definition ski wax is the same definition. Textile articles are the same. And then you get to the first substantive section, the prohibition on PFAS and consumer products. Remember, because of that unique first in kind issue where we ran out of sections in a chapter, we had to strike all of those sections that you had enacted in 131 because they were specific to each product. And so each product had its own section, but that used up all the sections. And instead of redesignating 3 different subchapters, we're just striking those multiple sections and combining them into this 2494F. And so the first subsection, manufacturers shall not manufacture, sell, offer for sale, distribute for sale, or distribute for use in the state the following consumer products to which PFAS have been intentionally added. Remember, it's intentionally added. Aftermarket stain and water resistant treatments, artificial turf, cleaning products, cookware, dental floss, incompetency protection products, juvenile products, and rugs and carpets. That should say residential rugs and carpets. That was in Act 131. And when I moved everything around, I failed to include the word residential.
Should it be the same on page 7 or is that?
No, because
that's
it's
different.
right. It's the definition is rugs and carpets, but then the modifier is
Yeah,
here.
okay. Thank you.
So should I make that markup?
Please.
Then you have the definition, ski wax is also prohibited. Then on page 8, line 5 through 7, you will have that provision that the prohibitions for these products with intentionally added PFAS do not apply to used products. Actually, B is for the use in state textiles or textile articles which regulated PFAS have been intentionally added.
Yeah. We're here.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but the Scandinavians are really into Nordic skiing and they use a lot of ski wax. Do you know if their ski wax has PFAS removed from it or manufactured with PFAS?
I don't know. I know the European Union has been moving towards that. I believe most of the Scandinavian countries are in the EU. I can double check for you, but it doesn't really matter for Vermont because if they did, it would be prohibited from sale.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if I'm assuming that there is ski wax that exists without.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And what was kind of neat, I was talking with the kids in Richmond Elementary this past week, and they all ski at Cochran's. And so I said, well, I talked about the ski wax, how we put it into statute, and that the US ski team that Jimmy Cochran was on. Do you know Ryan Cochran? I was like, oh, they all love that. It's good. The kids are more with it than most adults, which is awesome. Anyway, go ahead, Michael, sorry.
So page 8, line 8, that is the subsection that says that the used product shall not be subject to the prohibition. And then you get those striking those sections that were added next year with 31 because of the consolidation. Turf, cookware, competency protection product, juvenile products, rugs and carpets. And you can see in rugs and carpets on page 9, line 16, where it had said residential rug or carpet. Ski wax.
Okay.
Textiles, and then you come to the new section on fluorine treated containers. The first subsection, page 10, line 11. This is when you have one of those products that is listed as being prohibited because it contains a PFAS. It will also be prohibited if the product itself does not have PFAS intentionally added, but the container the product is contained in has PFAS intentionally added. So manufacturers shall not sell, offer for sale, distribute for sale, or distribute for use in the state a product listed under 2494A 1 through 9 that does not contain intentionally added PFAS, but that is sold, offered for sale, distributed for sale, or distributed for use in a fluorine treated container. Now, page 10, lines 16 through 19, that provides that prohibition we just discussed does not apply to used products. But then on page 11, line 1 through 3, this is where the container itself will be prohibited. So beginning January 1, 2030, the manufacturer shall not manufacture, sell, offer for sale, distribute for sale, or distribute for use in the state of fluorine treated container or any consumer product in a fluorine treated container. So whether you're selling the container separately with no product within it, if it's a fluorine treated container, it is prohibited. If it has a product in it and it's a fluorine treated container, it is prohibited. Then you have the language that the House committee added that authorizes the Attorney General to adopt by rule the authorized sale, offer for sale, distribution, etc. of a consumer product prohibited under this section or a fluorine treated container prohibited under the section. Based on the determination that there is a currently unavoidable use or need for that product, because it's currently unavoidable use. And then there's the definition of what currently unavoidable use means. The use of this PFAS is essential for health, safety, or the functioning of society, of which an alternative is not reasonably available. Now, this subsection D, page 11, 4 through 12. This is another requested change from the Attorney General. She has asked the committee to assess whether such an exemption is desirable at all, and then seeking testimony from ANR on the issue. And if the committee determines a compliance mechanism is desired for fluoride treated containers, rather than an exemption, the AGO would suggest extending the compliance date a few years beyond the current July 1, 2027 effective date.
So I guess ANR would say 28.
So for the record, Matt Chapman, I'm the Director of Waste Management for DEC. I think on this one, we don't support the currently unavoidable use exception. And I am, if the committee so chooses, I think extending this deadline out to, so that we align with where Minnesota is ultimately going to implement their broad-based consumer products program would be fine. And that's 2032. So it's 2 years beyond what the current implementation date is. Right now, the implementation date is 2030 for all fluorinated standards, right, Mike?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
So
And that, when I just read the AG's memo again, she says beyond the current July 1, 2027 effective date. The effective date is 2030 for fluoride treated containers, just to be clear.
Okay, so you're suggesting 32 to be consistent with Minnesota.
yes, and again, I have not heard an example of any of the sort of enumerated products, and it's really going to be cleaning products and cosmetics that there's actually, I think, because it's normally a liquid that's in one of these fluorinated containers, where there's an issue with those.
Cosmetics.
Those are the
I
Um, and I guess I would also say I am not opposed to reporting back to the committee either next year or in 27 with the report on whether any issues exist. So it would afford an opportunity for those industries
Course
who,
correction.
well, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, can we think about that?
So I'll just start it and
Yeah,
come back to it.
right, and I think, go ahead, Senator, but I was gonna say, the report back sounds good. I'm not sure extending it out to 32 is good. 2030 is far enough out as it is. And if we have a report back, then we'll know if it's far enough out. More or less. And we don't know what the EU is doing, so there might already be containers without, that are not for, don't have chlorine on them. And then, yeah. Out there.
So my question is just, it seems like, okay, the Attorney General wants to have some sort of like jurisdiction over this. And I mean, it could be in case of emergency, right? And my mind is going to places like if we have like a measles outbreak or something, and suddenly we need large quantities of vaccines or some kind of other, medicine or whatnot that happens to be contained in a container with PFAS, the AG can say, yes, this is accepted for this.
You're on you're on number one.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, makes sense.
I don't know. I'm just,
Well,
are we debating that or is that, are we?
no, we haven't, we were really down.
To be clear, the AG does not want that.
She doesn't.
Oh, she doesn't.
Not.
Mhm.
Okay. Why?
Because she doesn't think it's necessary for implementation. She doesn't, she specifically says whether it is desirable.
No. Never mind then.
Can we look at it with language without, with the language out? That the AG is concerned about, obviously some ways to go, but can we look at that? And then,
And then the next question would be on page 11, line 1,
yeah,
whether or not you wanted to move that 2030 date to 2032 as recommended by that.
oh, there's the date right there. Well, so then that would become, that we could leave the date and then have the interim report back.
So Minnesota does 32.
Right, the comprehensive programs in Minnesota, that means a year later than
I
Minnesota.
think so.
2032 and 2033 is when
Oh,
those
So
states.
Maine
are-
is also out there.
Yes,
They don't use silicone? Okay. I know. All right, well, let's look at it with 2032 and, trying to make it easy on us, but I think a report back would be helpful from ANR, in 2.5 years,
So report back,
January 28, 20, somewhere in there, 27.
There's an existing report that comes in 27. It
Okay,
just
well,
gets
let's add
added
it to that.
report.
Okay,
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 should I move on?
yes, please.
Okay, on page 11, line 13, this is language that's not changing from Act 131. These are the Attorney General's enforcement tools. The certificate of compliance is a key tool she will use in determining whether or not products have PFAS in them. That is not changing on page 12. Line 11, these are the penalties that she could see. There are penalties that she can seek, which are on page 12, line 12 and 13, which is referencing the consumer protection violations. And if it's a consumer protection violation, then the default civil penalty is in 2461. And that's a civil penalty of not more than $10,000 for each violation. But you should also know when something is a violation of section 2453, then there is a private right of action for a individual who is harmed or has damages due to a violation of 2453. And those people can sue for appropriate equitable relief and may recover damages of 3 times the value of their damages, up to 3 times. So just to be aware, then the AG has the same authority that she has to make rules, conduct civil investigations, or enter into assurances of discontinuance, as she does under the General Consumer Protection subchapter of Title 63, subchapter chapter 63. Then you get to some conforming changes to make sure that everything that you did in Act 131 remains the same. Section 2, the definition of regulated PFAS for purposes of textiles and textile articles. Remember, I referenced in the definitions, it has an allowable 100 parts per million. That is being reduced to 50 parts per million. And that goes into effect July 1, 2027. And then in the definition of apparel, remember when you first defined apparel, you had the language that you can see on page 13, line 17, where outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions was not included as apparel, but in 2028, outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions will be apparel that's regulated by this chapter. And that is because the outdoor apparel industry has been using PFAS in their products. It's been fairly ubiquitous. And they needed time to source it out of their products and to sell those products that had it in it. So you gave them an additional time to do that. Moving on from there, on page 14, line 1, this is the A&R report that Matt just referenced. On it before January 15, 2027, they report to you regarding the regulation by other states of PFAS and consumer products. This is to look at how those states, Maine and Minnesota, that are implementing programs based on that broad definition of PFAS are doing. And there's going to be a summary of those programs, including whether other states have implemented the regulatory regulatory program based on the definition. If they have, a summary of the effectiveness of those programs, including any obstacles or difficulties, staffing and cost, a recommendation based on review of those programs, whether Vermont should establish a regulatory program for PFAS in consumer products, in which are based on staffing required, timeframe for implementation, etc. And then page 15, any other information that the secretary determines is necessary for the purposes of informing the General Assembly. And then you would add in here a report back on how those states are regulating fluorine treated containers, including whether they are providing any exemptions to the prohibition of sale or distribution of those products.
Think you can, I guess I would say you could go even broader, whether there's any uses that would be prohibited or otherwise there are no alternatives for something to that effect. So it would give me time to consult with the industry groups who say that this is a problem to get more information for the committee before it becomes effective.
Well, that's good, and that, because there is that section that says any other information, but this adds some specificity, so we can say maybe just including this stuff. That works, Michael? Or do you want a separate section?
Matt, could you see what you said?
I think if we can do a examination of what other states are doing with respect to fluorinated containers and also whether the use of fluorinated containers is unavoidable in for certain uses, right? So again, it's sort of doing a more policy level unavoidable use discussion with the industry and reporting back to them.
There you go.
Because it could be ending up what Senator Gulick is concerned about during the pandemic.
It's possible, and I think you also have to layer in, and I'm certainly happy to discuss about this in the report when it comes back, is there's federal preemption around some of this. And so when we're
Yeah.
talking with medicines and drugs, I think we're probably in pretty squarely in a preempted area.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, having just looked at the FDCA preemption clause the other day, it's pretty ironclad.
Okay. Yeah, I know it is for other stuff. Well, okay.
Moving on, page 15, line 4, there is another report. The Secretary of Natural Resources reports to you on how to address PFAS in complex durable goods. You may recall that complex durable goods are those with 100 component parts or more, where PFAS may have been used as a component, and how to effectively regulate products of that kind, especially when a manufacturer using one of those components may not know if the component has PFAS in it. On page 15, line 10, or actually page 15, line 16, there's another report. It's from the Secretary of Agriculture recommending on how to address PFAS in food. Both of those reports come back in 2033. That date is based on the implementation of those broad regulatory programs in Minnesota and Maine, how they will have addressed these issues, and how both state agencies can refer to those states in their report.
Can we get an interim report on this? I mean, that's like a long way away, 8 years. That's 4 different legislative sessions. I'm wondering if there's some updates, not reports, but updates that could be provided either on a biannual basis.
So I think that to some degree, what's going to be covered in those reports is topically kind of being covered in the 27 report too. I mean, it asks the agency to take a look at comprehensive programs that are out there. And in fact, if comprehensive programs are covering complex durable goods or food, we can mention that in the 27 report. I think, and I'll just go ahead and say this. I mean, I think all of the states that are looking at broad-based consumer product restrictions on PFAS have identified that there's a challenge with, consumer products that have significant numbers of component parts and having to certify those component parts as being PFAS free.
Automobiles came up when we first.
That's it.
No.
Or airplanes.
Or air.
That was a fun time, and airplanes, right?
I do want the rudder to go up.
Yeah. I wonder what Beta uses. I wonder if they have PFAS. I didn't ask them that question while I was over there. Oh. So, okay, so some update, I think if we could just make reference to the 27 report that's coming in and say, link an update around these things in 27 and in 29. Updates are coming in and telling us. Updates are not reports. Updates are just, we need to keep this going.
I'm not gonna probably take
I'm looking at you, looking at Michael, I'm thinking about what's involved with
Well, the one question, do you want it to be written or can they provide? Or
presentation.
Right,
PowerPoint.
because if you don't say written, sometimes the agencies just come and testify and you're like, oh, we expected a written report. So if you're okay with testimony,
I'm okay with testimony, we usually get a nice little PowerPoint with it.
right, in 2027 is part of the report. And then in 2029 as
Then we'll,
testimony,
yeah,
update on how other states are implementing regulatory programs for complex durable goods and food.
right, yes, and simply because I know that there's going to be a lot of work going on with the other states, there's meetings, there's regional stuff happening, and it would be good just to keep us in the loop on that, that's all.
Okay.
We don't need to go, we don't need to be invited, but
Should I move on?
sure, please.
All right, section 6 and 7 are really just technical conforming amendments. Remember, we just walked through how there's going to be a prospective definition of outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions and a prospective definition of regulated PFAS. Because you're moving all of those things from Act 31 into this Bill H 238, you're repealing those provisions in Act 131. They haven't gone into effect yet, so you don't want a potential conflict or a change or conflict in effective date. Act 131 provisions repeal, everything is now in this bill. Similarly, in section 7 and the effective dates of Act 131, those references to the effective dates with PFAS and consumer products, which you are addressing in H 238, they are being struck as well. Those effective dates for chemicals in menstrual products and cosmetics or PFAS and firefighting agents, those are unchanged. Those programs are unchanged by this bill. They are not altered in any way by this bill. There's still the provisions on firefighting agents and equipment. There's still the prohibitions on all of those chemicals in cosmetics and menstrual products. No change.
Yeah, no, go ahead, no.
So just making sure this aligns with what we heard from our firefighters.
Not yet, I mean, it may, yes, they don't want firefighting equipment taken out, still in, so
No,
that's what we're.
we asked them to risk their lives, just.
No, we're gonna get to
I
that,
don't wanna-
we're getting to the bill that's in the house,
Okay.
and that's what I was gonna ask about.
All right.
And then you get to the effective date, section 8, line 18. The effective date section in section 4 and 5, the reports to the General Assembly take effect July 1, 2025. The prohibitions on the list of consumer products that you enacted last year in 131, that goes into effect January 1, 2026, as it was in Act 131, except the 3 new products, cleaning products, dental floss, and fluorine treated, they get to 2027 because you gave the products last year 2 years. You're giving these products 2 years.
Oh, goodness.
And then for cookware, they made a case to the House to extend their effectiveness until July 1, 2028. So cookware will be 2028.
So we need to discuss that briefly. I'm concerned that we're setting that one out very far.
Me too, it's 3 more years.
You know. Just thinking, why don't we stick with what we had 27. We've heard testimony, but we've also heard that there are alternatives to PFAS coated footwear.
Is this the argument that we often hear, that they want to be able to sell the products that they already have in stock kind of thing? No.
I don't know, I don't know what it, yeah, that's one of them.
Maybe we should,
But they'll keep producing it over time and then they'll come back and say, we still need more time to sell our inventory.
well, maybe, I mean, maybe we should hear from them.
We did.
Okay,
Yeah, we did.
you're not convinced.
So it's just a matter of, is it 27 or 28? What,
To be clear,
go ahead.
under Act 131, it was 26.
It was 26 and now it's 28. That's a big leap. Was it 26 July or 26 January?
January.
January. So why don't we put it out to January 27th? Compromise that we could make between the footwear people and consumers, other people. Us.
Okay. I'll just finish up with the effective dates. Page 17, line 7, the section 1, which includes all the substantive provisions, supersedes those provisions of Act 131 that conflict with each other. So if for some reason there's a conflict between 238 and Act 131, 238 is going to control. Then the definition of regulated PFAS takes effect July 1, 2027. Definition of outdoor apparel, July 1, 2028. Repeal of the Act 131 provisions and 7, the effective date of Act 131, January 1. So that's the bill and the firefighting equipment bill.
That
What was that number again?
AH 250.
So last year,
Can we put it up on the screen? We don't have copies of that. If we can put it up on the screen and then we'll know what it is that we're looking at. We did hear from Chris Doobie on this.
share.
Oh, yeah, house. H2.
All right.
Oh, good.
So remember last year, you did not ban PFAS in personal protective equipment for firefighting. You provided that at the time of sale. If the personal protective equipment contains PFAS, the manufacturer needs to provide a written notice at the time of purchase. The written notice needed to include a statement that the PPE contains PFAS and the reason PFAS are added to the equipment. Similarly, the manufacturer person signed the PPE and the purchaser of the PPE shall retain the notice for at least 3 years from the date of the transaction. This first substantive section in 9 VSA 2494S would add stationwear to those notice requirements. And stationwear means uniform shirts and pants worn by firefighting personnel in the performance of their duties, often underneath the personal protective equipment. So that's the first substantive change.
Okay, and so when we talk about the clothing that they wear under the personal protective equipment, it has to be something that is purchased by for it. I mean, I can see wearing your polo shirt and your khakis or your shorts when you're running in on a short notice, but
So I am unfamiliar with the type of equipment that stationwear would be.
We were told that they're like multiple layers.
So this, Chris Newby,
go ahead.
professional firefighters. So this kind of mirrored what New Hampshire did, because there are some stations like the pants that you wear. They have some products out there that are still in use called Flamex and so forth. It does have some PFAS in it. So this would say that you can't, there are alternatives out there, like Hartford, we switched to a non-PFAS, non-flame type pants. Regular cotton polo shirts. So it would mandate that, these would be the same as our turnout gear too. It kind of seems to me that if you're gonna take it out of one, you should take it out of something you're wearing every single day for 12, 14, 18 hours or more a day.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. All right, so now we've got that. Let's go on, keep going.
So then effective July 1, 2028, there would be a prohibited sale of PPE and stationwear containing PFAS. So effectively 3 years from now, manufacturer or the person that sells firefighting equipment to any person, municipality, or state agency shall not sell, offer for sale, distribute for sale, distribute for use in the state, any PPE or stationwear to which PFAS have been intentionally added.
PPEs.
Personal protection.
Yeah, I know that, how do you guarantee that a oxygen mask? Do we have replacements for those things?
I do not know, and I don't know if any manufacturer was consulted
Yeah, so,
during the committee process.
yeah, and it hasn't been consulted in this committee process. The other one is a little easier to see. Because it's notice. This one is difficult. This one is difficult.
It is, so I can, a couple of weeks ago, we had a state convention meeting. Massachusetts, so this law kind of mirrors Massachusetts and Connecticut. They've been approached by 3M who makes Scotty F packs about that. Because there are some components of the air pack that do have PFAS in it. I know the IFF is working with these companies closely to get them to move it away from that. So they are, and like I said, we initially thought it was just certain layers. It's in all layers. We never thought it'd be in our air packs. I think part of it is due like the straps and so forth. So that's out there. Mass is dealing with it right now with 3M with the Scotty F packs, along with the IFF, their Health and Science Division. So
Okay, so, so I'm thinking that on that second part, that's probably a place for the report, having this included in the report process, so we can understand what is available or isn't, and what other states are doing, looking at that. To adding the PPE in. So no, you don't have to answer now. It's a decision we have to make. It's a decision you can make. This is brand new right here. It's all brand new. We need to understand that. We haven't taken testimony on it. We're hearing from firefighters, and we do want to accommodate their request as much as possible. I'm thinking that at the place we're in right now, at the end of April coming up, let's think about that as part of the report process. My other question for Michael is, notice given. Where are we? Oh, the notice piece, is that section 3? No, section 2.
Right, it's section 2.
Yeah.
Line 13 through 18.
I don't understand. This is H 250.
Yeah.
We don't have it.
No.
In this committee.
No.
So sorry, what's,
We're looking at the language because it has a PFAS, it has PFAS.
Right.
Taking PFAS out of firefighter.
So you're gonna add it to,
We could add it
okay,
to our. yeah,
what's it
thing.
doing over there? Do you know where it's?
it is now.
Okay.
They have, it's an H bill, I think, right,
It's also-
we're considering it at this time.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, why not have?
Well, the why not add it, we want to make sure that what we're adding is doable. And then who is the notice being given to?
The manufacturer gives it to the purchaser at the time of sale. It's a written notice. I'm sure,
How do we do that?
well. Are you aware of the California Green Chemistry requirements?
Yeah.
And how any product that has one of the allowed chemicals, but is still potentially, has an effect on human health. They have a notice in all of those products. It's under the California, it says that under California regulations, you're being informed that this contains X, which may cause this X problem. And you would have a very similar situation when the product is sold. There'd be a written notice containing the product.
There are a lot of products I buy, including the wrapping on this may contain. So if it's already on products,
Well,
why would we put a separate?
well, I was just giving an example of how notice could be provided here.
Okay.
I don't know specifically if California requires this. I'm just saying that it would be the same type of notice that would be provided.
Now, I'm wondering, what fire department today, knowing what we know, won't ask? Does this contain PFAS? And why,
I mean, that's the policy decision. That's the do you put the duty on the purchaser, or do you put the duty on the consumer? And you've done it both ways throughout the years, chemicals of high concern to children, the manufacturer just needed to inform the state, and then it was the consumer's duty to determine whether or not the chemical was in the product. But in other types of laws, you've required the manufacturer to disclose. That's your policy decision.
So, and I'm also looking at the language here that says sells firefighting equipment to any person, municipality, or state agency. How broad is that?
Well, any person is any corporate entity. So maybe it's being sold to the military. Maybe it's being sold to the airport, which would technically be a municipality. But it would be to any
Police
person,
department?
any person as defined in state law. The default definition is pretty much every individual person and every corporate entity that you can think of.
So is that already language that we have in statute?
The definition of person.
Naming the notice that's here,
Oh, yes, this notice,
already here.
the only thing that would change for the notice is adding stationware. It's already, it was in Act 131 for the personal protective equipment.
So what is what's wrong with adding stationware? I'm asking.
Nothing. I think we should.
I'm fine with adding that.
Okay, so section 2 and station wear
Mhm,
will be added to H 238.
mhm. We need to have a date to that. I'm looking at Matt. He's looking really excited about it.
Well, I think it's they're the effective dates.
There's two different, the change to the notice is July 1, 2026. So that will be added in.
That might have to go out. Would that have to go out a little bit? Give time for.
Well, that's the date for the personal protective equipment.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, I know, but now we're adding something in. You might want to give more, I mean, for station.
Stuff that's gonna be sold next year, so
Right, I'm
likely.
just saying maybe that this has to go out a little bit.
Okay. How far out would you like to go?
Not very, 27, January 27, July, which one? July 27.
We
Earlier
should
the
be in the
better.
dark, 'cause we haven't
Right, we
heard
anything
anything
back, what the station where people say. We're gonna have to, I'm sure we'll hear from them. Which would be helpful. What are you thinking over there?
I'm trying to remember when California's ban on PFAS and apparel comes into effect, because I think it's going to be like putting the notice of alignment with that certainly makes sense. So just
Can you let us know, talk with Michael about that?
Yes.
About that,
All right, so maybe I confer with Matt and that's the effective date.
that would be helpful, thank you, yeah.
All right.
And then for the second one, this has got a lot more in it. Than meets the eye. The PPE stuff. We went through some of this with. Last time.
Well, because Katie was the attorney last time, I'm not sure what testimony you took, but it is of a scope that I don't know if it's
big.
possible by 2028.
No, I think something in the reporting process would be helpful to us.
So I'm happy to say that I am aware, based on conversations I've had in other jurisdictions, that other municipalities in New England have changed over to non-PFAS turnout gear. So I know that when we're talking about turnout gear, that is available and in use in multiple other jurisdictions in New England. I guess, I hate sort of having these conversations sort of generally, but I mean, I think the issue tends to be the respirators and whether there's an alternative.
That was
to
the question.
respirators.
Yeah.
I mean, you could keep the prohibition, but exclude the respirators from the prohibition and report back on that in a year or 2 years so that it gets reassessed. But I'm looking at Chris to see what his thoughts are on that.
So, yes and no. I mean, I'm gonna take a lot more aggressive stance.
Sure.
Because be honest, that's the only way industry is gonna change.
Sure.
We feel like, so ours is a year later than everything's done in Mass. And I don't know what Connecticut states are. It's happening all over. Illinois has similar legislation
Yeah.
moving right now. California's tried it, but they found that some of these chemists have workarounds. So they try to be a lot more specific to prevent those. If anything, I'm looking at this, the way we presented it. They can do it, the industry can do it, and actually there's gonna be changes coming with the NFPA standards, with the testing. Mandate, something like I told one of the tests they do is on each individual layer. They're gonna do away with that and try to make it an ensemble test. So it makes it less likely that you're gonna see the PFAS in the layer, the moisture variant. So I think the stuff is moving. I would encourage you to keep the dates. I don't think it's undoable. I agree with you. I mean, they are making gear out there right now that is. San Francisco went to it. Houston's going to it. Concord, New Hampshire has it. So it's out there. This is just gonna force them to move a little quicker.
Maybe, we're little, we're little, we're not like California.
No, but I mean, if I mean, if every state around you is doing
Yeah.
it,
Right.
the manufactured gear, they're coming in here.
Yeah.
It's,
I get you.
you know, we shouldn't be an island because we're gonna get it anyway.
Got
So
it.
this was just saying, hey, we're with the rest of these states. We want, this has to happen. Enough is
So
enough.
can we ask this, Michael? We ask you to work with Matt and as necessary, you guys reach out to Chris and maybe bring us back some language that will keep as much as possible in, but the concern around respirators that has been brought up, I mean, it's a real concern on both sides. There's no question about it. All the moisture there, you're right. Breathing it in.
Okay,
Can we do that?
sure.
That would be awesome. Including what date it should be.
Nice.
And then we'll get together at some point and we'll bring a bill back here. Great.
Okay.
I think it's great. I don't, when do we have 238 next week? You know,
Tuesday.
have it sometime. Let me see. Not Tuesday.
I definitely got it inside already.
Did you?
Yeah.
See, that's because she's, Friday, and maybe we can get a little bit up a little bit if we get ready to, but that's fine. Okay. All right. I'm looking, yeah, we might be able to move it up a little bit to, Thursday. We'll see, Wednesday or Thursday. Just keep Kiki informed about what you and I'd like to sit down with you ahead of
Sure.
time just to look and see what's there and let me.
Sure.
Okay. We're good. Thank you for today. This has been really helpful. I think we've made huge progress. The House may disagree with what we've done, but we'll find out about that soon enough. And so then we'll pick the bill up next week and try to finish it off. Okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good
All right.
young man, he has been very patient and polite.
So I coaxed him to come up because they're gonna go to Mansfield Dairy. He loves their chocolate milk.
Nice,
That's the deal is
nice.
today before we go home, we're gonna go inside.
Boring for him.
We're gonna take